What's something that was technically allowed but instantly made you lose respect for someone? Story 1. Not returning your shopping trolley. Unless you are in the very instant of receiving news of a loved one having a medical emergency or are having a medical emergency yourself, there is zero excuse for not putting it in the return bay. Story 2. Leaving your tray with your leftovers at any fast food chain instead of just taking it up and putting it in the bin before you leave. Story 3. I had a friend that was a real bum, no job, no prospects, no friends but me. She was entirely subsidized by her mom and grandparents. Yet every time they asked her for help with pretty much anything, it was fudge you, I don't care, or I'm not doing shoot until you give me money to go to Goodwill. Oh, also take me to Goodwill. I don't care what you're busy with. She would constantly try to reach up from the back seat and change the radio from nice classical music that her mom was listening to like Nicki Minaj or something similar, even while her mom was actively slapping her hand off and telling her no. I guess just incredibly spoiled. And while not like illegal, I lost every bit of respect I had for her. Story 4. An alternate vein from one I see presented, not taking credit or forwarding information I give them. Currently, someone taking credit for something I present doesn't bother me so much. I've even said, take credit, I don't care. I'm stable in my position. My job is, more often than not, firefighting various levels of things. The people that matter know I'm darn good at it. I have no problem giving someone advice or an answer to a challenge they have so they can take it from there. My cup runneth over in that department. Please take it. If I give you the answer to a problem that plagues you daily with the exact layout to bring to upper management that will get it fixed for you on a silver platter with embedded LEDs, and you don't make a move on it, well, that tells me that you couldn't pass a test with the answer sheet sitting on your desk. You're literally here to waste everyone's time. It's one thing to be humble and not chase praise, but it's another when professional courtesy just disappears. Even if you don't need to stroke your ego, seeing your hard work taken for granted without a simple thank you can really change how you view a colleague's character. Story 5. My mother is technically allowed to adopt an infant just 2 weeks after her 50th birthday. Doesn't mean I think it's a great idea, especially since she has 8 other children and 6 grandchildren. The 8th kid is a sophomore in high school. Story 6. Really random and specific, but there was a pro Magic player who called over a judge because a non-native English speaker said a word incorrectly, even though it was very clear what he was trying to say. Answer: I'm a new player and was watching some videos and saw one that led to a rule change. A native Spanish speaker in a tournament said combat in order to go to the beginning of combat before attacking to activate his spell, but back then the shortcut combat meant go straight to declaring attackers. The opponent called a judge and the Spanish guy ended up losing that game due to that. He even had to call a Spanish judge so he could fully understand what was going on. I think he did still win the tournament, but he could have gotten screwed because of it. Story 7. During my master's, one of the professors told a guy in my class about a paid opportunity within the university, telling him to spread the word to anyone interested. We got this info only once applications were not admissible anymore, and this student was the only one who applied. Mind you, this was not a guy who needed it, quite the opposite. From that moment, other students and I never really spoke to him anymore. Story 8. People who hand out cards or fake money with religious scripture or a political scree instead of giving tips. Story 9. My in-laws live in a $800,000 house, fully paid for, but because their retirement income is low, are signed up for every type of public assistance they can get. They have the money. It's infuriating. Story 10. When a friend became the manager, instantly, he did all the things the previous manager did that pissed him off, only worse. Delegates and doesn't help, distracts people and tells others off for distracting people. Story 11. In my younger days, when happy hours after work was a sacred tradition, I made sure never to miss. I had at least one coworker who would run home first and let their dog out before joining us. I never said anything, which may reflect poorly on me, but it used to really disquiet me. That dog was home alone all day, saw his owner for maybe 20 minutes, and then was left all alone again for at least an hour or two. Feels a bit like solitary confinement for that dog. Story 12. Making reservations at 10 different restaurants at a very busy time and location, then just deciding right before the reservation time which one you'll be gracing with your presence. Meanwhile, 9 other parties can't get reservations at any of those other restaurants because the restaurant thinks their reservations are full. Prime selfishness. Story 13. Jumping to conclusions, being judgmental. Just take a second and put yourself in someone else's position. Think of a few scenarios or reasons behind someone's actions. We're not perfect, so don't expect others to be. Story 14. People who always try to one-up you. You had a bad day? Theirs was worse. You got a promotion? They got a better one. Like, bro, just be happy for someone else. Story 15. Younger people who have grown up hearing about how unhealthy smoking is, who still started smoking anyway. Story 16. Not returning money on agreed-upon date and then ghosting. You ain't getting a penny from me in future if you can't return money on time. Story 17. Hoarding money. The percentage between lowest wage workers and CEOs. Being wealthy. Story 18. Weaponized loopholes. Following the letter of the rule while clearly violating its spirit. For example, exploiting return policies, contracts, or social norms. Answer. And when enough people take advantage, it's a great way to lose generous policies for everyone. CLL Bean. They had one of the most generous warranties in the business. Way too many people were dickheads about it, returning their dead relatives' entire closets, wearing things to rags and then returning, etc. And now that warranty has been severely curtailed. Story 19. When at a shop and you have items in a trolley but decide you don't want X item, so instead of putting it back, you just place it randomly on a nearby shelf. Stop being a lazy prick and at least put it back where it belongs. Story 20. People who care more about the victim of bullying, intimidation, making a scene than they do about the bad behavior that caused the situation in the first place. Story 21. Leaving messes at grocery stores because it gives workers job security. No, it doesn't. We already have job security, but thanks to you, our jobs are even more miserable. You're not helping. Just buy your crap and leave us in peace. Answer, I'm part-time at a grocery store, and for us, messes actually give us less security. Our store hours are extremely limited, so every minute cleaning up someone's mess is a minute not being able to get our actual job done, causing us to go over hours, which in turn means hours cut for non-management leads. Just had a girl quit 2 days ago because we've only been able to give her 1 day a week, and we've had the same crew months ago when we had normal hours, so it's not like we're overstaffed. Story 22. Lying or manipulating. I have left friend group because of one person like this, and past relationships, as well as cut contact with my mother eventually. I am at the moment really sensitive to it, but then again, I think I am fine having zero tolerance to it. Story 23. People standing 4 abreast in shopping centers aisles blocking every other person from shopping. Mate, I just want to buy some milk. I don't have time for you and your entire family to dawdle down the aisle, slowly eyeballing every single item you're not gonna buy. Story 24. Exploiting return policies to harmful behavior. A store repeatedly. Totally allowed, but feels slimy. Story 25. Ghosting people. I get that it's normalized now, but basic communication isn't hard. Just say you're not interested. Story 26. When a coworker mentions that they use ChatGPT to answer questions, write messages, or it is obvious due to the irrelevant info falsehoods contained in the messages. Story 27. People who are passive-aggressive. If you're going to be a bully, it's shoot enough. But being a private area about it is even worse. Story 28. People who just let the dogs jump and slobber all over you despite a clear preference against it. I do not submit to a violation of my space just because I am visiting you. Even worse if it's just a chance encounter with somebody I don't know on the sidewalk or something. Answer. This. I have 2 big well-behaved dogs, but I still don't allow this in my house. They're either in a place command, on a leash, or put out unless I know company is cool with them. Sometimes even when company is dog-friendly, if I know my dogs are going to be obnoxiously all over them, I still don't allow it. Good manners for the maze, space for the people. Equally annoying is the people with off-leash dogs using the excuse, but he's friendly, when their dog runs up on you out of nowhere. I don't care how friendly or well-behaved you think your dog is, put it on a leash in public areas. Story 29. My ex didn't ever return buggies. She would just leave them next to her car. She was proud of the fact. Story 30. This American girl entered skiing half-pipe competitions and just didn't crash, so she made it to the Olympics with the Hungarian team. Guess she had citizenship through parent or something. Proceeded to do the run without a single trick. To me, she stole a spot from someone who could have competed simply because she gamed the system. Story 31. Standing up as soon as the seatbelt sign goes off and trying to leave before your row. No one wants to be on the plane for longer than necessary, but you are being jerk and elbowing people in the head and delaying those who do understand that the fastest way to deplane is in an orderly manner. Zero respect. Story 32. I once bought 20 pairs of cheap earphones for $20. I hand them out to people who play TikToks at full volume in public. Story 33. Social function. Date keeps dismissing the servers like she was a queen. The only thing she didn't do was say, "Shoo, away with you." Story 34. A person I was interested in talked to me about others she was dating. Of course, we weren't in a relationship, so she's allowed to do what she wants, but I thought it was weird and made me lose a lot of attraction. Story 35. Family vloggers. I find it wrong to post every second of a child's life online, but there are still so many family content creators out there with lots of fans and supporters as well. Story 36. Not putting back their shopping cart properly. There a huge sign in the corral that says small carts on one side and large on the other. Just push your cart all the way in on the appropriate side. It takes 1 second to be a decent human and make life easier for everyone else around you. Story 37. When someone uses their phone in the middle of a face-to-face conversation, that's an instant respect killer for me. It's like they're saying whatever's on the screen is more important than the person in front of them. Just feels rude, you know? Story 38. I met a guy online that I was considering going on a date with. Before that could happen, he told me he had to go for a bit because he was putting his Navy uniform on. Not for work, no. He was going out to a bar and wanted to get free beers. This was 4 or 5 years post 9/11 in a Navy town. Disgusting. Story 39. Losing at a board game, decided to just ruin it for everyone. I was at a board GSM night and playing a 4-player thing, and one player fell hopelessly behind. So he switched tactics to making everyone else miserable. Whenever someone pulled ahead and could win, he'd put all his efforts to tanking them, usually hurting his own score even more. What was supposed to be 1 hour of fun, was turned into 4 hours of misery for everyone else. Story 40. Leadership that want to have anything to do with employees except when there is an employee appreciation event that involves a nice lunch dinner. Like, we all know you are only here for the food. Stop pretending like you are here for anything else. Story 41. Held a poker game, nothing crazy. Told the boys 20 buy-in and a 10 rebuy. One guy decided to be a male body part and didn't stop rebuying because I didn't specify how many buy-ins. He ended up winning the game after spending a total of 120 in rebuys. The rest of us never spent more than 40. He hasn't been invited back since. Story 42. Nintendo sabotaging Gunpei Yokoi's last invention before passing away and using their momentum to profit off of Yokoi's work anyway. Story 43. A former friend came over for game night to play Monopoly, bought one of every property, and happened to get all of the light blue ones in Boardwalk Park Place, then refused to trade anything and expected us to sit there and let him slow roll us for hours until he nickel and dimed us to passing. I called him out for it and let him know how shoot it was. He thought it was funny and said he just wanted to win, with not a single care about anyone having fun. Same guy also wanted to play GoldenEye with me, and within the first 5 minutes realized he could camp the body armor. I still won. We weren't friends for very much longer after that. Those things seem insignificant, but they did show a character flaw I couldn't ignore. There were more weasel-like things he did after that too. It just became toxic, and I removed him from my life. This forgotten wallet maneuver feels like a scene straight out of a bad sitcom. Honesty is the foundation of any relationship, and if someone starts being tricky at the bill-paying stage, it makes you wonder how they'll handle more serious life situations. It's less about the money and more about the transparency of intentions. Story 44. People that stand up and try to go down the aisle on an airplane immediately after it parks at the gate. No, you let the aisles ahead of you out first. You do not need to barrel through everyone trying to get their bags out of the overhead so you can save an extra 20 seconds. If you do that, I assume you are of zero class and an absolute Philistine. Story 45. Using AI for anything creative, educational, or interpersonal. If you can't put your brain into gear to create or learn, then there is something deeply wrong with you. Story 46. My 40-year-old brother put his foot up on an end table at our sister's house to tie his shoe. Could have sat down on the couch, but no. Story 47. I was in charge of a large amount of people. I had a conference call with regional leaders. My boss, who was the vice president, listened in on my call. He called me afterwards to give me feedback. He stated I was great, but was curious why I credited the managers who came up with some great ideas. I wasn't exactly sure where he was going with it until he concluded with, "In business, you take the credit." He was sincere, trying to take me under his wing. I knew from that moment I wasn't where I should be professionally. Story 48. Treating people differently, depending on how much money they have of make for you. I'm not talking about code switching or having a work persona. It's more about objectifying people like tools, then not thinking they are worth looking after, they serve their purpose, or someone better comes along. Story 49. A new coworker of mine once took all credit for a problem a different coworker solved. Nothing huge, just saying to someone, "Maybe try this," and it worked. He came to our office saying he was the one who had the idea. From then on out, I knew not to share any info with him that wasn't critical. Edit. I'm sorry to everyone replying it happened to them. Let yourself be heard. Talk to your manager about it, because if you let it slide, they'll do it again and reap the fruits of your labor. Answer. Was 3 to 4 months into my new company. Coworker of mine, who is usually full of energy, comes in looking down. Turns out her team was trying to automate some shoot. She met with her team lead to discuss some solutions she had thought of. He told her it needed more work and wasn't ready to present, but seemed like an okay idea. But IR needed lots of polish. He presented that same exact idea, a worse version to be honest, within the week in private to their manager, their leadership, who then accepted it. She didn't know where to start about fighting back. Don't know if she ever got her get back. She just told me she didn't have the energy to deal with that shoot and would just make sure to never share anything with that lead ever again. Story 50. A snobby parent allowing their kid to rescind their birthday party invitation to another kid. Even if the invitation was sent by mistake, which let's face it, it wasn't, it would have been an opportunity for the kids to grow. Story 51. Parking their car across the street along my yard when they had room in both their garage and driveway, because he didn't want oil dripping on his property. Story 52. Leaving the shopping cart in the middle of a parking spot because nobody can force me to put it back. It's the ultimate litmus test for whether a person is capable of self-governing to do the bare minimum for others. Story 53. This is petty, but habitually leaving the last bite of food behind so you don't have to clean the container. Story 54. Really anything that involves customer service. Anybody who is taking advantage of customer service because you know it's their job are assholes. Story 55. Not picking up after your dog. I once dated a girl that looked at me like I was crazy when I picked up my dog's poop while walking it with her. She said, "You're a better person than I am." It's true, I am. Story 56. Dated a guy who didn't put back his shopping cart. He was a jerk in other ways, but that was the first thing I noticed. Story 57. Shoot business practices. I don't care how much you make and how well your company does. I know everything I need to by how you treat your employees. And I'd guess most of the time it's not great. Story 58. At the gym, people who don't wear headphones when on the treadmill and watching videos on their phone, or talking on the phone to someone when they're right next to me on the treadmill. I don't want to hear your conversation. Story 59. Not tipping people who rely on tips as their income in the USA. Until they require those jobs to pay a living wage, you should tip. These companies should not receive any tax benefits until they do. I can't stand people who don't tip on principle. If you get lousy service and you are absolutely sure it is due to your server, talk to the manager, as there are people in the back who may rely on a portion of those tips. You can always leave it with them to disperse instead. Most of the time, slow service is due to management's or the owner's refusal to staff adequately. Story 60. Buying clothes you can't afford to wear to something and then returning it. I dag K. Something about that just makes me think you're a shoot person. Answer. I was living in my car and had about 80 to my name, and was applying for jobs, and a person who I had talked to on the phone to give me instructions for an interview told me to dress sharp if I wanted to interview well. I went 3 thrift stores trying to find something that fit me, then caved when I went to Target and bought the least expensive suit coat they had. It was about $75. I taped the tags inside the sleeves so they wouldn't dangle. I wore it for all of 35 minutes, and then untaped the tags and returned it immediately after my interview. I got the job. So I thought I had money for food and gas while I worked the first 2 weeks and was waiting to get my first check. Admittedly, I'm not the best person, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Story 61. Being rude to staff. I to see what job they have. Insulting a cleaner is just as bad as insulting a chef. Story 62. Using a loophole to screw someone over and then bragging about it. Yeah, it might be legal or within the rules, but the second someone is proud of winning on a technicality, Instead of fairness, it tells you exactly who they are. Instant respect evaporates. Story 63. Marketing professor assigns his classes cases. The cases are consulting jobs he has on the side. Students doing consulting for free. Story 64. Wholesaling properties. It's a predatory practice that basically allows a middleman to steal the equity in your home so they can sell it for market value to the end buyer. Most often, it's the elderly who is targeted because they don't know the real value of their home. Fortunately, some states have caught on and have started implementing laws against this, but my state still allows it. Story 65. Biggest things I can think of that will cause me to immediately stop associating with someone. Treating people they view as social lessers, like shoot. Most commonly retail hospitality staff. Littering, making a mess needlessly. I get sometimes there are complications, or you don't have a good way to hold on to something, good place to put it. But when you throw food packaging on the ground, when there's a trash can right over there, you're a fudge piece of shoot. In both cases, there's some nuance at times, and I'll take it into account. But generally speaking, fudge those people. Story 66. Giving away a pet without putting any effort into resolving whatever the issue is, or just giving the pet away because they don't feel like having a pet anymore. Story 67. Not letting others leave the train or bus at a station before trying to squeeze themselves in. Not only is it disrespectful, it also makes it take longer for everyone else since it makes congestion at the doors worse. Story 68. People who don't give up their seat on public transportation for someone that's disabled, elderly, etc. Story 69. I recently told a new 4 months senior VP that the way they wanted to implement something had the potential to break things in downstream systems due to tech debt and asked for the reasoning behind their decision. The senior vice president responded in a corporate because I said so manner. Story 70. Being rude to service staff just because the customer is always right. It is legal to be a prick, but it shows a total lack of class. You reveal your true character when you talk to a person who cannot talk back. Answer. My dad bragged about making a bank teller cry at a drive-up window because she asked for his ID. For context, my dad is the CEO of a multi-million-dollar business and used to stop weekly at the bank to deposit his checks. He was very well known among the bank, was personally close to the region president and VP of the bank, and thought he was God's right nut and deserved the dignity of that title. He would do this the same time and same day each week after he picked us up from school. This meant we would run into the same teller every week for several years, and they got to be friendly to the point she wouldn't even ask for his ID if he didn't put it in the chute with the check. Well, bank policy changed early 2000s that all customers have to supply ID during all transactions. My 50-ish-year-old dad went absolutely ballistic on this poor, what I assume was an early 20s-year-old bank clerk that was probably using the job to get through the college a couple blocks away. He fudge absolutely reamed into her in the bank's drive-thru, which is situated in the parking garage next to the bank's main branch for our region. It was echoing through this 6-floor parking structure, and it went on until the regional VP of the bank had to come down, talk my dad down, and then tell every teller my family is excluded from the rule. I was in the passenger seat and was absolutely ashamed of his behavior, trying to become one with the seat. Once I got old enough to drive, I made sure to deposit my checks with the same clerk. My parents had me working at their company basically full-time once I turned 12, so I had weekly checks. I made darn sure to give her my ID every single time, and when she tried to tell me I didn't need to, I told her I was just following the bank's policy, not my dad's. I got homemade cookies every week I stopped by the bank, including after she had been promoted to be the assistant floor manager of that branch. My dad wonders why I refuse to talk to him anymore. Story 71. Not throwing away your rubbish when you're leaving McDonald's or the cinema. It's such a small thing to make life a tiny bit easier for everyone. Story 72. I don't think it's right that people open food in the grocery store, eat half of it, and then put it back on the shelf. Also, when kids are running amok in the store and the parents are nowhere to be found. Story 73. Taking credit for someone else's efforts. Edit. Thank you to everyone who commented, upvoted for making this my most interacted with comment ever in my time on Reddit. Answer. Had a boss who did this constantly. The worst was all us managers were in a meeting brainstorming on how to speed up production on the line. One of the supervisors had suggested a great idea, and we called him to come in and share it. He sits down, has a whole diagram ready, and we all agree it was going to work. CEO sits there and lashes out at the supervisor for not bringing the idea directly to him instead of his manager, shut down the idea and sent us all on our way. The supervisor decided that was enough for him and put in his 2 weeks. He left, and not even a week later, we're called back to the office so the CEO could show us his new idea, which was exactly the same thing suggested by the former supervisor. He lost 3 of us managers that same day. I quit without notice, and 2 more left that Friday. Good news, though, he died a painful passing, and his cunt of a wife lost the business within months when she tried to run things herself. We all understand that kids can be unpredictable, but there's a distinct line between an active child and parents who have simply checked out. Expecting staff who are already busy with their jobs to double as babysitters is a level of entitlement that's hard to ignore. Story 74. Bosses that schedule meetings earlier than employees have to come into work or later than they have to be at work. They're just on a weird power trip, as if work isn't soul-crushing enough. Also, bosses that ask you to turn on the camera in remote meetings. They're real creeps. Story 75. Teachers who say you deserve 10, but I'll give you 9 in order to spur you into doing better. If a teacher does that, they instantly lose my respect. Not giving proper credit when somebody performs well actually damages people, especially young students, making them feel like they're not doing enough, lowering their morale and overall discouraging them from actually improving their skills. Story 76. When there is free stuff in the office, pizza, fruit, etc., and that one person wants to take as much as possible just because it's free. Story 77. When I told my colleague that my cat was sick, his instant response was, "Put it down." I've loved that guy for ages, but as soon as that happened, respect instantly dropped. Story 78. TBA, most things that are only done because they are technically allowed. That implies it properly shouldn't be. Story 79. A coworker once bragged about clocking out early while making the intern finish their work, and it just stuck with me. Totally allowed, nothing illegal, but it felt gross in a quiet way. I remember driving home thinking, wow, I don't actually like this person at all. That moment kind of changed how I saw them. Story 80. I don't know this person or anything about them other than that they live in my neighborhood. They drive to the park trailhead that is directly across from my house and stuff their personal trash bags into the community bins. It makes it difficult for people who just want to throw their dog poop in. I've noticed they drop full bags off at every bin in the whole park too. Then all the dog poo bags overflow because there is nowhere else to put it. This is an affluent area, and they drive a nice car, so it leads me to believe they are not of good character. It is totally fine to toss a few things from your car here and there, but this is clearly their home trash. Story 81. I had a pretty good friend who worked for a small software publisher, a place I'd worked at in the past, so I still had friends there. We had a local computer suppliers that knew us all well, and we went there regularly to pick up all sorts of related goods. Our business had a charge account with the supplier so that we could just go in and sign for stuff. The publisher downsized, and my friend ended up getting a new job. A couple of days after leaving the old he went to the supplier and bought himself a new modem and signed for it. The accountant at the publisher asked around the office regarding the purchase, and nobody knew anything about it. After a bit of investigation, the supplier provided a nice video of my friend signing for the new modem a couple of days after leaving the job. The publisher was actually pretty nice about it and just made him come in and pay for it instead of calling the police on him. I'm not a big fan of thievery. We haven't really hung out since. Story 82. Anything that's technically allowed, but clearly either isn't in the spirit of what the rules are saying or what the designers meant, or anything that's not in the spirit of the game being played. Just be a decent person. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Story 83. Ticketmaster style fees. Technically allowed to list a 40 ticket and then hit you with 25 inconvenience charges, but it's basically legalized bait and switch. Answer. Yeah, and for some reason their competitors try the same shoot. So I just say no and don't go to the gig. I figured out for one venue they were saying the charges were amounting to about $300,000 a year. Yeah, for that, they could just make their own ticketing platform easily in a city full of skilled but low-cost software engineers. Perfect growth opportunity. And not have to charge so obvious lies, which also imply we dislike grassroots culture and local business. Better to pay a big company from the other side of the country, which is the opposite of their marketing stance. Story 84. Scamming like in scam call centers. Even I know many have no other jobs, but it still feels wrong and make me lose respect. Story 85. A few weeks ago, I went on a date with a woman. She was cute, interesting, and a doctor, and she casually mentioned that she wanted one of those fake service dog vests for her pet dog so she could take it into restaurants. I did not call her again. Story 86. I used to know a girl that would buy new clothes, wear them to an event, and then return them. I don't know why it bothered me, but it does. Story 87. When I was 18, a friend and I went to a Guitar Hero 2 tournament. It was 2008. GH was everywhere. At our town's sister high school. The setup was each bracket would be assigned the same songs, and highest score would advance until the first round of semifinals, where you could then pick which song you wanted to play to advance. Now Guitar Hero 2 included the song Freebird by Lynyrd Skynyrd, which famously has about a 6 or 7 minute long guitar solo, and there were, I think, 6 of us in the semifinals. We were all chatting, having fun playing, and watching each other, and the vibe was really cool and chill. And I brought up that mathematically Freebird was the only song any of us would pick since it has so many more notes in it and has the potential for higher score than any other song in the track list by a mile. I suggested that I didn't personally want to sit through 45 minutes of the same song playing over and over, and asked if everyone was cool with agreeing not to play that one particular song. Everyone did, and we started the round. I was first, didn't pick the song. Next guy behind me didn't pick the song, but the kid third in the queue looked around at us nervously as he was selecting his song and picked Freebird, completely blowing past each of our scores and forcing everyone after him to play it too. He ended up winning the whole tournament and got like a 30 GameStop gift card or something, but I immediately lost all respect for the guy. He had prioritized winning a local game tournament for teenagers, getting a super lukewarm prize, over letting people have a good time. Come on, dude. It's fascinating how some people manage to feel as relaxed in public transport as they do in their own living room. Those around you don't necessarily want to become involuntary listeners to your personal dramas or loud videos. It's a small detail, but it clearly shows the level of respect for someone else's space. Story 88. To preserve harmony in an intimate relationship, some people choose to lie. I believe relationships do matter, but they have to be built on trust and a shared reality. When so many people do this, it's no different from eliminate the goose that lays the golden eggs. Story 89. School pickup lines are brutal, and everyone uses courtesy to deal with a bad situation. I have several times watched people drive past the line, fake park, and then reverse to the front of the pickup line. It is infuriating when you get there early to be in line and these people cut. Most stop because I reported them. I can't stand line cutting, especially in vehicles. It is dangerous for everyone involved. One guy has had the cops called on him for doing this for 3 years. His workaround now? He makes his daughter drive there an hour early and park at the front of the line, and he then drives past everyone and parks in front of her. Then she leaves, and he waits for his kid, blocking everyone because they can't drive around him half the time. The school has dealt with him every time, and he laughs with his kids, and they flick off the school line and drive away laughing. I have lost all respect for the school officials, the cops, and obviously this guy who is raising children who will be exactly like him. Story 90. Bullying people online, or in person for that matter, but I feel like people don't see online bullying being as bad as long as other people think it's funny. Story 91. I manage a team of 3, and they were all hired when the company was remote, then forced to come back into office during a RTO about 5 years later. I'm new and have only been there 6 months, so I was hired in office. One guy, we'll call him Mike, lives 1.5 hours away each way. The commute was awful on him. Then he came to me and told me he has a medical condition with his eyes and can't see at night, so during the winter months under daylight savings, he won't be able to get to and from with enough daylight. He went through HR for a reasonable accommodation and was approved to work remotely during this time of year. As his manager, I was thrilled for him, as I saw how hard the RTO was for him given the commute. When my boss heard, she said no, he may not work remotely. She fudge changed his expected hours to be 9:30 to 3:30 every day and required that he still come in, and got away with it because she was still accommodating for the medical condition, which, mind you, means he was away from his desk between 3:30 to 5 p.m. to drive back home and then required to get back online to finish his 8 hours. It was fudge awful. He is so angry and spiteful. I lost full respect for her, and there was nothing I could do. Luckily, he must have done back to HR or consulted other advice because he realized he can state he's having vision problems and can't come into work that day each day and be covered to work from home. So he now texts me every single day to copy and paste the exact same text. I suspect this will continue until daylight savings reverts back. Yeah, anyway, I work for a corporate monster. Story 92. My brother convinced my parents to hand him the entirety of our inheritance to him early. Now it's all his, and there's nothing I can do. Story 93. Dating multiple people at the same time because technically they're single and can go on 20 dates a week but never want to be exclusive with anyone and waste people's time. Story 94. While it's not a rule while driving to let someone in front of you, it irks me when I do let someone in and they don't acknowledge my kindness with a wave or anything. Story 95. Just being honest with either no consideration of consequence or worse, deliberate insult or malice. Barf. Story 96. I worked at Disney World. A lot of guests will buy toys and junk for their kids to play with during their trips. Then they'll take advantage of Disney's overly generous return policy and return it all on their last day. Disney loses money because they can't resell for full price. The merch goes to Mickey's Treasures, where employees can buy the opened merch for nearly nothing. Disney makes up for the loss by increasing prices for everyone. Guests will also buy bubble wands, sunglasses, etc. during their trips. Their destructive kids will break it and they'll return it or exchange it even though it was their own fault that it's broken. I never understood that mentality of expecting a business to allow an exchange or return for an item that you broke. If it were me, I'd pay for the replacement because it wasn't defective when it was sold to me. I had one guest brag to me how she had exchanged her kid's sunglasses 5 times so far on that trip because he kept breaking them. Some people just have no integrity. Story 97. Taking someone's parking spot they shoveled out. Technically legal, but man, are you a POS if you do it. Story 98. My old boss came up to me on my lunch break and interrogated me about my LinkedIn profile. I just hadn't updated it yet because the job was like not even a month old. But they were convinced that was proof I was planning to betray the company, and leave soon I did. But it was because of that. A boss can see my LinkedIn, obviously. Hut calling me out like that, and on my break, made me really feel like this was going to be a toxic workplace. Story 99. Smugness. Anyone who oozes any amount of smugness, I just write them off. I can't handle that personality type. Story 100. Years ago, got a raise at work. While technically it's not illegal or anything to laugh at your subordinate, my supervisor handed me a paper announcing my raise while she laughed in my face, saying it cost more to print this paper than what my raise was worth. Story 101. Students could get a free hamburger at McDonald's when buying a menu in my area. Acquaintance got his free burger, went out and tossed it in the trash, in front of homeless people. Story 102. People who are flaky. If you say you're going to do something, follow through. If you say you're going to be somewhere, be there on time. Story 103. Excusing the bad behavior of small children. I was babysitting my siblings and some boys of a family friend. Those boys were constantly making trouble, especially when they got the Nerf guns. Well, I was listening to Finnish heavy metal on my AirPods, and eventually one asked to hear it. I said no. He pointed the Nerf gun at my sister to try and make me. I gave him a thorough earful after that, making it clear I was telling his family about it. When his older sister arrived to collect the boys, I told her what happened, and she just went, "Well, maybe you should have let them listen to the music." I still don't like her. Story 104. Anyone middle or upper class claiming benefits meant for the underprivileged, specifically including all small, larger business owners who hide their income, avoiding tax and evading fringe benefit personal use tax, and then go a step further by claiming things like education subsidies that are means tested. They are not for you. They are not for your kids. They are not incentives or rewards for entrepreneurship. You do not deserve them. Story 105. If you stand behind or walk behind me too closely, and then on top of that bumping into me, yeah, you're done. It's over. Go act like a caveman somewhere else. Story 106. Back in college, when the lecturer would ask something to the class, our friend group, being the studious kind, would start to mouth the answers as a way of discussing amongst ourselves, and there was this guy who would keep an ear out and repeat out loud to the teacher whatever he heard us say. The teacher would often point out how he was studying well. Found it really weird. Funny thing is, one time while we were discussing the answers to the questions, my friend ended up mouthing the wrong answer. This guy heard and repeated it out loud. Teacher immediately shot him down. His reaction was to look at us with an angry expression. Remembering it still makes me laugh. Story 107. People who run lawnmowers or snowblowers really early in the morning when they don't need to get out for work. Story 108. Is cutting in line technically allowed? I was waiting in a long line outside waiting to get into an Obama rally with a colleague who had just started working with me. Everyone in the line was chatting with strangers and having a good time. My colleague kept slipping past people because they weren't paying attention. I immediately doubted this colleague's honesty, and yes, he continued doing sketchy stuff and was eventually fired. Story 109. In the 4th grade during our state fair, my friend and I were partnered together on a state, and I let her wear a beautiful gown my grandmother had sewn for me a few months before for my Halloween costume. Well, my friend's mother happened to be standing with us by our display as a large group of older women came by and complimented the dress. My friend's mom immediately starts loudly talking and bragging about how much effort she put into sewing the dress just for the event. Ate up all the compliments about how talented a seamstress she was, what a good mom, what a great job she did, etc. Then the meanie took credit for buying bread and butter to serve at our table and said it was her clever idea because Minnesota was the bread and butter state. That was my idea, and I had bought the bread and butter with my own money. I was so mad and also lost all respect for her in those 5 minutes. Story 110. A friend from work wanted to leave a lunch without leaving a tip. I said the waitress was great. We have to tip. She said I never do. I need my money. Needless to say, we never went anywhere together again, and our work friendship faded away. The tip would have been about $3 each. I took care of it. Ridiculous. Story 111. Lots of people think it's cool to call things they don't like gay now. They always say the same shoot about how that's how we talked back then. And it's just like, do you really think your 12-year-old self was some amazing moral person or something? Always instantly lose respect for those people. Story 112. People who constantly commiserate with you or diffuse your complaint by putting other people down. Like, oh yeah, I'm sorry you had to deal with other employee that you didn't even complain about. Everyone knows he's an idiot. Call me next time. Obviously, you would say the same thing about me to them, so don't trust you now. Story 113. Treating their pet like a doll? You can just dress up, parade around, and stress out for video content. Story 114. Screaming at people working at a fast food restaurant for a simple mistake. Correct food, perfect food, fast time, and clear order, but they forgot to put a straw in the bag. Definitely a telling sign to me. Story 115. Being rude to service workers because the customer is always right. It might be technically allowed, but it instantly tells you everything you need to know about someone. Story 116. Used item Costco returns. The Christmas tree return Boxing Week or January, etc. Your trash, you bought it, used it, and trying to return it for a full refund. Story 117. Upper management's hiring decisions. And the fact that they say they don't have the budget to give staff a pay increase but can afford an inexperienced general manager for a rumored $85,000 salary. The kitchen manager doesn't even make like half of that from what I've heard. Story 118. Voicing support for Trump. Under most circumstances, I don't give a shoot if someone's political affiliations are different from my own. Far as I'm normally concerned, politics, religion, morality, all that stuff is complicated in a way that means you're reasonably entitled to your opinion. But as far as Trump is concerned, I have never seen a man so deeply and obviously racist, misogynist, anti-American, anti-Constitution in my life. You'd have to have been blind, dumb, and stupid not to see it, even back in 2016. I myself might as well be a caveman as far as my own interaction with any kind of news media, especially politics, is. And I knew about all the toxic bile he was spewing during his campaign and all the shoot he pulled in his first term. By this point, supporting him is, in my mind, tantamount to a public declaration that you think Adolf Hitler had the right idea, and nobody has any excuse for not realizing that. Work-life balance is a hot topic these days, but it's moments like these where it faces a real test. Respecting an employee's personal time is key to a healthy workplace atmosphere. If the issue doesn't require immediate world saving, it can almost always wait until the workday begins. Story 119. My boss didn't grant me leave for relocation literally across the country, almost 3,000 miles, and then said it's not something they can do. Someone asked HR on my behalf. I did not want them to, and HR said it was something they could elect to grant. Story 120. Reclining your seat into the lap of the person behind you on an airplane, especially if it's a crowded non-overnight flight. I was on a short hop from Atlanta to Omaha and had bruises on my knees from the old man in front of me repeatedly banging his seat into my legs. When I asked him to stop, he glared at me, then went back to trying to force his seat to occupy the same space as my kneecaps. So yeah, you technically paid for a seat that reclines, and the airline technically allows you to recline it, even if the guy behind you is trying to use his tray or whatever. But you're still in jerk if you do. Story 121. This one is pretty minor. When you are driving and approaching a red light, and someone in the next lane swings into your lane, taking cuts in order to be first in line at the red light. I may be the only soul on earth who is bothered by this. Story 122. When I worked in IT, we had mobile hotspots for employees who traveled. They were overwhelmingly used by salespeople when on the road to get unlimited better internet. Unless otherwise noted, they had 5 days to return them. They never were. You'd have to chase salespeople down daily to ask for them back because other salespeople needed them. The same people getting mad at me for not having them were the ones I tracked down a week later asking why they haven't returned them. One day, the networking department calls me because several of their hotspots are way over on data. For all intents and purposes, data is unlimited. There's no standard use case our data plan would be exceeded. They track the devices and I'm able to pinpoint which room the devices are in. 5 sales guys are sitting at their desk using the mobile hotspots to watch March Madness on their phones and tablets. All 5 of them checked out devices for business trips, which they technically had, local, and just never returned them during the week. They're technically allowed to use them for personal devices, so they didn't violate any company policy. But these guys in particular were always assholes about not having them available. I confiscated the hotspots and informed my boss, who before I even got back to the desk, had been contacted by the sales director asking why I took the hot posts away when they were needed for business trips. Story 123. Paying people an exposure or unpaid internships for work that's clearly a real job, technically allowed in a lot of places, still feels gross. Answer. I remember doing interviews for internships as a CS student. My university explicitly didn't allow students to take unpaid internships or for employers to offer them, and they told us pretty explicitly that we should expect to be paid good money for good work. And even despite all of that, there were still a few absolutely delusional recruiters who seemed to expect me to work for them for free as if they were doing me a favor by letting me do so. Like one guy running some tiny company who offered no pay and just a tiny stipend allowance to cover my expenses. I forget the exact numbers, but I'm pretty sure I would have been effectively paying for the internship rather than getting paid. All for some no-name tiny company in a different state doing nothing interesting. I've had to deal with plenty of recruiter-interviewer bullshit over the years, but that's the only time I've ever hung up on someone mid-interview. Story 124. Taking credit for someone else's work. Not illegal, but it tells you everything you need to know about them. Story 125. Not tipping or tipping poorly and using companies should pay their employees as an excuse while you yourself take advantage of them. Story 126. Talking down to a child. Not reprimanding, bullying. Being condescending to a being that doesn't even understand what you're doing. Makes me seethe. Story 127. Not breaking cardboard boxes down before putting them in the recycling bin. When I lived in NY, people would constantly tell me, oh, you don't have to break down the boxes. Yeah, sure. I don't technically have to, but it keeps things organized and makes it easier for others to recycle if I do. Also, people who throw away a bag full of empty plastic bottles in the trash. Like the system we have for recycling plastic is a mess, but you can at least try. The recycling bin is right next to the trash bin. Answer. Similar to this, there's someone in my apartment complex that has been placing their full trash bags next to the trash chute rather than just opening the little door and putting it down the chute. I know it's the same person because they use pink bags. You're already bringing your trash to the chute. Why can't you just put it in? Why are you just leaving it in the hallway? They're not big bags. I can't imagine the person bringing them to the chute is physically incapable of putting it in. Story 128. The exact details are a little foggy as it was over 30 years ago, but a buddy of mine told me about a wrestling tournament he was in. There was a deaf wrestler competing. Apparently, to communicate during a match, his coach would hit the mat to communicate different things to his wrestler. 2 slaps meant this, 2 slaps, 1 pound meant this, 3 rapid fist pounds meant this, etc. Well, the deaf wrestler was up during the match, and as a desperate measure, the opposing coach got down on the mat and started randomly hitting and slapping the mat to try to confuse the deaf wrestler. I don't remember what the outcome was, but I can tell you this, the opposing coach did not win much respect from anyone else at that tournament. Answer: I knew a guy who fudged with the deaf school's soccer team when we were in high school. It was agreed that when you play them that whenever the ref blows the whistle, everyone puts both hands up to signal to the deaf players to stop. He was a defender and raised his hands when there wasn't a whistle and took the ball from an opponent who was bearing down on goal. That was definitely against the rules. He got an immediate yellow card and a harsh talking to by the ref. Story 129. Went to a wedding with an open bar paid for by the bridegroom. Someone I know was going to the bar and ordering her drink and a can of beer that I know to be expensive, having her drink and putting the beer in her bag to take home. I never respected her anyway, but still fudge scummy behavior. Story 130. Watching videos, listening to music, or talking on speakerphone while out in public. Get some headphones. Everybody doesn't want to listen to your shoot. Answer: I was out shopping the other day and there was a lady listening to an audiobook without headphones. Since school's going to open again soon, the shop was full of screaming kids and frazzled parents. But she was listening to it at high volume. I think she was listening to the Dune audiobook. I felt like she should invest in some cheap headphones, which were a couple of aisles down in the same store. I was a tad bemused. Story 131. I used to work with a bloke who, come knock off time, would slam his laptop shut and sprint out the door like his arse was on fire. It's not that I don't get the whole, if I'm not being paid to be here, then I'm not here thing. But how about finish up what you're in the middle of, close your laptop in a way that won't result in it breaking, and say goodbye to those around you and leave at a comfortable pace. Story 132. Went out to eat with my partner and some friends, including my best friend at the time. Before the check comes, my friend asked for the military discount. Her father was in the military, not her. I didn't blink an eye until she showed me the receipt where on the tip line she wrote "Have a nice day" and said, "I hope this makes their day," in a joyful tone. She is no longer my friend. Story 133. Hitting their child. Edit. Took about 30 seconds to get downvoted for saying you shouldn't hit a child. Story 134. When I worked retail, my boss said you get a 10-minute break if you work 6 hours. Legally, that's all we have to give you. Then they micromanage my 10 minutes. Everywhere else you've ever worked gave at least 15. I can't explain what it is, but something rubbed me the wrong way about how it seemed they didn't even want to give the 10 minutes. Story 135. People that don't wash their hands after using the bathroom. What are you doing that's so important that you can't take 20 seconds to wash your hands? Story 136. People who refuse to pick up their trash or pet waste. The fines for those who break the rule are obviously not enforced enough to make the rule anything but a hopeful deterrent to teach people common courtesy and care for community. Story 137. This happened with my ex-husband and a hookup I had after my divorce. Points to a stranger minding their business who looks like they're from India or literally anyone with a skin tone similar to mine and stares at me. Look, it's your people. And they mean it with disrespect, disguised as a joke. If someone ever does that to me again, I'm walking straight out. I was a pushover back then, so I kind of just sat there and took it. Not going to happen again. Story 138. Men who don't help women that are in their vicinity that need help. Very off-putting. This happened with a male friend of mine. He's a big guy. My friend had broken her leg one time. We were hanging out at her apartment. She's limping down the hallway and she falls. He just sits there. I rushed to help her up. I never looked at him the same again. And she's like 100 pounds wet. Story 139. I lost my respect for Bill Burr when he went to Saudi Arabia and showed that he was a sellout. And also completely lost my respect for Denny Leary when I found out he was a fraud and a joke thief. Story 140. Hearing that Trump gave a porn star campaign money to have an abortion. It seems that the move is legal or does not lead to jail time. Since then, I have lost respect for Donald Trump. Story 141. As executor of a will, secretly having their brother's mobile home and the land appraised, and then taking that value out of his portion of the inheritance. The brother is disabled and lived on their land for decades in a mobile home they bought for him. I suspect this was done to the other sibling too. The executor had their house paid off by the deceased several years before, so it's not like everyone didn't get help. You can argue the deceased should have solved this beforehand by transferring ownership, but that doesn't make it okay. I doubt it even occurred to them that it might be a problem. I am related, but am none of these people in the story. Executor told me this story a few years after it happened, unsure why their siblings won't talk to them. Story 142. Posting videos of children, own or others, on social network absolutely breaks up their right to privacy before they even have a chance to understand that they could have had it. Story 143. My dad making my mom pay her half of the $100,000 debt he made secretly of it over the decades by spending money for himself and always telling her they had enough money. She was naive and let him do the finances, but he lied and made those debts. When they divorced, she was legally responsible for half of it, but I never regained the respect lost for him making her pay that. Story 144. Amanda is leaving early. Does that mean we can all go? Amanda has an emergency, so no. Oh, I see. I have a special disdain towards people that do this. Usually clearest in classmates, but can happen anywhere. The person who thinks that because someone else is getting an exception, it's their right to get the same even without reason. And then no one else gets exceptions ever again, even in emergencies. Story 145. Taking COVID money when it wasn't necessary. They are already wealthy. Looking at half of Hollywood. Answer: by hiring an FCA attorney, a PPP loan fraud whistleblower may file a qui tam lawsuit against the fraudster on behalf of the U.S. government. In successful qui tam suits, people loan fraud whistleblowers are eligible to receive an award between 15 and 30% of the funds recovered. Hotline used the complaint form to report suspected fraud, waste, harmful behavior, mismanagement, or violations of laws and regulations covered in pandemic-related legislation or the One Big Beautiful Bill, Public Law 119-21. Use the appropriate form to submit whistleblower or whistleblower retaliation complaints as well. Story 146. I beat my friend in Madden 07 by running down the clock and kicking a game-winning field goal as time expired. He never played me in Madden again after that. Story 147. Being a bigot. It's legal, but I instantly loathe a person and lose every iota of basic human respect I might have had for them. They lose all value as a living being in my eyes. Story 148. Level 60 mage just finishing a struggling, low-level warrior that is fighting against two mobs in a PvP server of World of Warcraft. Great fudge display of skill, you absolute jerk. Story 149. Worker took the second to last free soda and put it in his pocket, then also took the last soda. Loudly stated everyone does it, and he needs them both for his lunch. Tool. Story 150. The woman who swiped every single pack of chicken into her trolley in front of me when we'd queued for ages to get into the supermarket during COVID. I just wanted a single pack of chicken thighs to feed me and my partner for the week, and was bloody fuming. I've had to tell myself she must have been cooking for a huge family or a charity or something because the level of selfishness she showed by taking every single one in the fridge pissed me right off. Story 151. Recording strangers without their knowledge. It's so rude. I don't care. It's not illegal. It's rude. I think if you do that, you're probably a shoot person. Story 152. My boss treats me significantly worse when I wear my glasses. He'll criticize me in front of everyone on calls. He'll question my work with dumb questions that don't make sense. But when I wear contacts, he just smiles goofily through all the meetings. When I was blonde for a few months, he disliked it so much he reported me to HR. Story 153. Walking instead of taking taxi. Whenever I'm on trip or somewhere with my friends, I'm the only guy who prefer walking, but they'd be like, take taxi, don't be so cheap. I'd be like, I can give you fare of taxi, just walk. Story 154. When a husband or wife says disparaging things or otherwise embarrasses their spouse in a social setting. This holds true for couples who are not married as well. Story 155. I did 2 interviews and a take-home assignment for a job at my local university. I was given a verbal offer and a tentative start date, but 3 days before I was supposed to start, the hiring manager rescinded it and reposted the job. She apparently decided she wanted to try to find someone with more experience in big organizations, but said she'd keep me in consideration if nobody else appears. Technically allowed, but really soured me on the team and the university itself. Story 156. Being in the mid-20s or older and dating 18-year-olds, it literally means that the only reason you didn't go for it sooner is because it's illegal, not because of your morals. Story 157. I worked with a young guy at an entry-level factory job right out of high school. The custodian was so nice, loved his job, and everyone liked him. Boss asked him to pass on a message for us to do a specific job. The kid said, "I'm not listening to him, he's just the janitor." Story 158. My ex-boyfriend adopted a kitty in a shelter and abandoned him back after a few days because the kitty woke him up one night. Two friends of mine used a glitch to have access to food pantries and spoiled tons of food. They were bragging about it with racist takes like, "We took the food so minority can't have it." Story 159. Using AI. My school allows ChatGPT and even had a whole announcement about it, but if you don't put your 100 into your learning and use it to write your essays and such instead of using your brain, I won't respect you as an academic. What are you paying thousands in tuition for if only to use AI the whole time? What are you remembering? What are you learning? What are you contributing to the field as a whole? Story 160. Abandoning your family. There's no law against leaving your wife and kids, but a guy like Steve Harvey will never have my respect as a man. Story 161. I had a really close friend for years. I respected him until I caught him making fun of me with other people behind my back. Story 162. Taking the last of something shared, coffee, snacks, whatever, and not replacing it or even mentioning it. Technically fine, but tells you everything about how they think about other people. Story 163. Talking loudly on speakerphone in a quiet public place like a bus or waiting room. It's not illegal, but it's instantly annoying. Story 164. Asking my wife and I why we don't drink adult beverage or why we don't have a baby. Not any of your business, Karen. Just because 99% of the world does those things doesn't mean everyone has to. Story 165. Not me, but my friend told me a story of someone who came in to play an escape room where he works. They don't offer refunds because they are a small, locally owned business, and it costs them just as much to process a card as it does to refund it. And most people are understanding because it warns you several times before you book anything or charge your card. One day a group of 7 comes in and one of them, let's call him Chris, says that one member of their team was sick and could they have a refund? My friend reminded him of the policy and offered a credit instead. Chris says that's ridiculous, and my friend tells him the reason. My friend, we're a small business and we're the cheapest in town. Chris, don't give me that shoot. My friend, okay, well, Chris, so I guess I'll tell everyone that you're struggling to make ends meet and you'll probably go out of business soon. Someone else in his group stepped in and changed the subject. My friend started to go over the rules, but noticed Chris on his phone the whole time. He also seemed to be avoiding eye contact all of a sudden. After the game started, my friend checked the Google reviews, and they had a new 1-star review that said I accidentally bought tickets for 8 people instead of 7, and they refused to issue a refund. The employee told me that they're struggling with operating costs and will probably go under soon. Horrible experience. The worst part was it worked. He talked to the owners about it, and they actually refunded 2 of Chris's tickets. When my friend told him this after the game, Chris smugly said, "Yeah, that's what I thought." Story 166. Leaving a mess on the table at a restaurant food chain. What kind of pig are you? Wipe the crumbs off the table, stack the dishes, throw recyclables, and waste in the bins. Yikes. Story 167. A friend always shows up at events and eats free food, but never brings anything or contributes, but still complain on small things. Story 168. Giving your pet a mean name to be funny. Just always rubbed me the wrong way and gave me the same vibes as people who use their animals like accessories. My friend's brother growing up had the sweetest little old lady cat they called Shithead, and I just never understood why. Story 169. Yeah, I remember that kind of crap happening, and it always pissed me off. Weaponizing language barriers to win a game is wild behavior. Like you're not outsmarting your opponent. You're just being a rules lawyer with no social skills. Story 170. Talking behind over people's back, especially when they act nice to them next time they see them. He did. Thanks for 355 likes. This is the most I have ever had combined. Edit 2, 908 likes is insane. Thank you guys so much. I'm so grateful. Story 171. US here, not tipping servers because they're standing up to low wages. The owner's responsibility shouldn't be passed on to me. No, you're just screwing over the person at the end of the line. And people who do this are rarely actually politically active. They're just cheap and shoot. Parents who fold when their kids are upset. I'm not talking like empathizing with their kids' emotions or helping them work through them. I mean, like setting a boundary, X, I've offered dinner, and you don't want any, which is fine, but you can't have dessert instead because one, you say you're not hungry, and two, our bodies need certain foods to grow, and dessert is not that food. Then folding immediately at tears, whining repeated asking. Social boundaries and ethics are individual things, but there is a certain basic level of respect for other people's commitments. Trying to justify questionable behavior by saying, it's not my responsibility, might be technically true, but from the outside, it still looks like a conscious disregard for the feelings of others. Story 172. Politicians who harmful behavior every perk imaginable. For example, traveling everywhere with their families, going to expensive events on the public purse, because according to parliamentary law, they are technically allowed to. Money-grubbing scum.